Hey, what is up? It is your friend, your homie, Damian Howard, with another Village Talks segment. I am, y'all know it, elated, excited, as I typically am for this episode because one of my friends from my education technology space, whereas there's hundreds of us from the city of Chicago who are coming together to talk about the highs and lows of this entrepreneurial journey. One of my friends is here and uniquely going to give us perspective on what this concept of village means to her. I want to remind y'all that when you come into this space, when you're watching these Village Talk segments, every single time, the hope is and the intent is that there's something that's said here that's going to inspire, that's going to empower, and or educate. So, as I am learning and gleaning information from these guests on how they approach the concept of village, how they approach entrepreneurialism, financing business, engaging in collaboration with other folks, hey, there's going to be a nugget of inspiration, education, or empowerment in there for you as well. So, with that, Pam Schilling, if you could just jump in there, give introductions, say what's up to the people, that would be amazing.
Okay, cool. Well, I cannot do all that energy that you do, Damien. So I'll have to do it my way. It's really great to be here and thank you. And gosh, I was thinking about this and how to give some context. So I think I'll say a few things. What surprises people when I talk, and I do a lot of talks at universities. So I'm a first generation college student. My father was very poor growing up, never went to college. My mother didn't get to go because she was a woman. And, like a lot of kids, my parents had aspirations. We talked about college very early. It was never a question if, it was always when and where. So that has shaped a lot of my life. As a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. And then I realized you can't fly the space shuttle if you have to wear glasses. So that was out. At some point, I wanted to be a lawyer. I met a tax attorney. It sounded terrible. So I studied accounting.
Right.
And, eventually I went to business school. I got an MBA. I did all the things that MBAs do. I was a consultant for many years. I worked in the technology space. I never would have anticipated in those days that you and I would be having this conversation. I'd never heard of education technology. It just wasn't a thing.
Mm.
Um, but along the journey of my life, there were a lot of professional experiences where I think because I was first gen, because my parents did not work in the kind of college educated workforce, there were a tremendous number of things that I learned the hard way. But on top of it, I had some amazing mentors. And I was very fortunate because people encouraged me to go to business school. I went to the University of Chicago and like my world was just expanded in ways that were unpredictable. Um,
And that was Chicago Booth.
at Chicago Booth,
Okay.
right? And we can talk more about sort of how I became an entrepreneur, which by the way is quite by accident. We can talk about how I got into career. But I think at the end of the day, what I always like to tell people is the career is what you make of it. I've had 5 careers in my life. I think I have one more before I'm done. And it's a journey. And the more that we know that it's a journey and we are excited about that journey, I think it creates opportunity that wouldn't exist otherwise. And that is a lot of the message that I try to spread.
You know, it's so interesting that you talk about the reality of having different pivots in your life, the just kind of untraditional route to entrepreneurialism. And I paused and thought about how I wanted to react because I'm at a stage in my life where it's like you, I feel like I've had like 5 different hats, professional hats, or ways that I've showed up professionally. since I've been working. But I'm like, man, like if this entrepreneurship thing now this time doesn't pop, um, hey, let me just slow it all down, do what I know to do what comes comfortable, go back to the more traditional, what is it, 401k or 403b type of setup, with the health insurance and the securities. And in my mind, something gets me to a place whereas it's just like, Damien, yeah, like I don't necessarily know how long I want to persist with the grind, at least on my end and with my working in my life, that comes along with the journey of entrepreneurialism.
Yeah.
So I'm encouraged. That's all that to say. I'm
Oh,
encouraged, and the reason being, right, is because, like you said, it's all about perspective. That ability to take a step back and understand that through the journey, there's character development. I'm learning new skill sets. I think is an encouragement for me to potentially take a deep breath, inhale, exhale, and just kind of think about the why behind why I'm landing in certain places as it pertains to my entrepreneurial journey. It seems like you wanted to reply to that.
I think that's really insightful, Damien. And I would say this to anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur or who thinks it's sexy. I don't think it is. I think it's the hardest job I've ever had. And I think that I've had extremely hard jobs, but it's the best job I've ever had. But I think you say something that everyone needs to really pay attention to. Persisting as an entrepreneur is hard. It is very easy to bring a product into market. Today, with AI, it's easier than ever. Anybody, like a 10-year-old, can do it. Persisting to build the product, to get customers, to maintain customers, to deal with their problems. You have a team, you have to raise money, you have to do things that you've never done before.
Yep.
It is hard. I mean, you have to have really, really good perspective. And I think what helps me,
Hmm.
this was a conscious choice. It's not something that I was like, oh, let me just go do this. I mean, it was very, very intentional. I had 20 some years of business experience behind me that gave context.
Hmm.
And like on my worst days now, I was saying this to someone yesterday. I had a really busy day and there's a couple of tough problems that I'm working on. And I was speaking to actually one of my advisors and one of my close friends. And I was like, it's 10 o'clock. It was a tough day.
Hmm.
This is nowhere near as tough as one of my days in consulting.
Right. I hear you.
And maybe it's intellectually as tough, it's physically as tough, it's long, but I feel like because I have context
Hmm.
and also I have a different purpose for the work I'm doing,
Hmm.
that absorbs the toughness in a way. It doesn't dismiss it, but don't underestimate how hard it is to work for a startup. And the stuff you read, yeah, it sounds fun, but it's not always what it seems. It's a little, speaking of it, it's a little Wizard of Oz at times.
Great analogy, and I totally concur. You speak of the fact that you've had mentors in your life, and the space that I invited you to today, Pam, is all about this concept of village. And implicit in the mindset behind why I even launched this podcast series was this sense that, hey, if we try to go at it alone, we're only going to go so far. But when we figure out how to create synergies and come together, I mean, it's like a rocket ship. It's like a boost that nothing else can give us when we find those collaborations. And like you, I'm deeply committed to the concept of mentorship. My whole application is surrounded around, trying to equip mentors and bring mentoring organizations together in Chicago and beyond. So I'm all about that life of mentorship. But I would just love to hear from your perspective a little bit more about what mentors have meant to you. Even if you could talk to us a little bit about the journey of your intentionality, if there was any intentionality, to go and find those mentors. To not only, and I don't feel like you said this in your introduction, to not only get your MBA, but to continue to persist, and you even when it got the DBA, right? So yeah, talk about the place of mentors in your life.
Yeah. I was in the right place at the right time. Like coming out of college, I was offered a job. I went to work for a company called Sprint. People may have heard of it. It was a telecom company at the time in the early 90s. And the department that I was moving into was transforming itself. It was going from kind of this accounting, auditing to more of a consultative internal, consulting role. And as a result, they hired new senior people from outside the company. And they came from GE, General Dynamics, Price Waterhouse Coopers, EY, like companies that at that time, through the 80s and early 90s, were known for leadership development.
Hmm.
And in our standard practices, the people and the culture automatically created mentorship. So as a 21, 22, 23, this was incredibly formative for me. And I was, one of those like smart kids coming out of college. If I work really hard and, I say intelligence things, I'll get promoted. And there was a man in our department and, there was a little bit of tension and maybe my performance review didn't go great. And we went to lunch one day and Alan said to me, "You're pushing too hard."
Hmm.
And what is happening is you're not coming off the right way. And so why don't you think about trying this? And it was like, think about the success of everything around you and enable that. And I think Damien, I was 23, 24 years old, and I did not like hearing it. And I was kind of defensive, and Alan was a great guy. He'd come from GE. He was under the, Jack Welch leadership umbrella back in the day, which was a big deal. And then I again got lucky because we created a leadership development program in the company and we had formal mentors. So we had to meet with people, and these were all, you know, executives that were 2, 3 levels down from the CEO.
Hmm.
And then I think I continued to be in the right spots at the right time. After Chicago Booth, I went into consulting, and consulting is a place where there's an apprentice model. And I was at a boutique firm, and I just ended up working with people that took that role seriously.
Hmm.
Like you'd sit at dinner, right? Because you're traveling, you have nothing else to do, and we would talk. And they tell stories. Consultants are great storytellers. And that, for the first 10 years of my career, that was just it. And then I think the other part of the, intentional element, doing an MBA at the level like a school such as Chicago Booth,
Hmm.
they tell you day one, the network is important. You are now part of this family, and whatever you think about that, there is truth to it. And it also, I think, gives a level of confidence that I can go out into the world, and when I need the assistance, the guidance, the mentorship from others, I'm going to ask for it.
Hmm.
And over time, that was just what I was doing because the type of work I was doing was frontier. It was always on the edge of innovation. It was stuff that wasn't being done. I was in new territory and I had to learn from other people. But I will say, like, kind of bringing that to today, When I became a founder, and I have close to 30 years of business experience
Hmm.
as a founder day one, I was doing things I had never done before. And the only intelligent choice I felt like I could make was to have mentors.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I just, I reached out to people. I reached out to faculty at Chicago Booth that were, celebrity faculty in the world of entrepreneurship. I reached out to, classmates of mine that were now senior executives. I've slowly grown my network of people in ed tech.
Yeah.
I've done it, who've been there. People that work in technology and now are, in Silicon Valley and doing some of the development and innovation around AI. I now as a founder, and especially when you're at the zero stage and you need people around you, and you need people that can speak truth to you, because you don't always see it. You're like, I'm building this thing, I got this idea, I'm all fueled up by passion, and you don't always see things clearly. And you need people who can be the voice of truth. Those are mentors.
It was so much value in that segment that we just had right there. And I know the village watching this was well fed by that as I was. A couple of things stood out to me, Pam, as I was listening to you is one, for those of us who are leaders, we would do well to create a cultural ethos and environment whereby mentorship is just the norm. It's what we do. It is creating a context by which people understand that if you're going to survive here, if you're going to align with our values and who we are, you're going to be a person who is willing to receive and give insight and counsel, almost in a way that's just automatic, right? And I was kind of probing a bit earlier because I was trying to see, like, were you one who was constantly raising your hand and say, hey, come over here? And it was some of that, right? You did some outreach as you were in different stages of your career, but there was something powerful about you at the age of 21 going into a culture and a context by which mentorship was the norm, which means that you didn't have to go seek it out.
Yeah.
It found you. And if you were going to be based, I don't have any better way to say it, about that life,
Yeah.
and in alignment with what that organization was about, you better get with the fact that here we receive help, we receive growth opportunities for people that are one, two steps beyond where we are. And I just think that there's something powerful there for the nonprofit leaders who watch this, folks in our ed tech space who are going to see this and watch this, just to have that intentionality from day one with the way that we're building and being a part of our organizations. And I'm curious when it comes to Archer now. Firstly, I think just a little mini commercial again for what your company does. I know y'all are connecting with about 12 universities, and excited that y'all are kind of looking to scale that work, make even broader impact within the schools that you all are already in. So talk to us about Archer. But I think I want to kind of stay and park a little bit longer on this whole concept of mentorship. How are you taking the experience you had as a 21-year-old and bringing that type of cultural expectation to the organization that you are now leading?
So it's a good question, Damon. So what Archer fundamentally does is recreates the career experiences that I had the good fortune to have. You need great advising. You need to understand the unwritten rules through the pathway to employment to get a job. I mean, so fundamentally, we enable solutions to drive better employment outcomes for early career talent. We do skill development through e-learning, job search programs, grant writing for people that are in that world, like PhDs. And the whole mission of Archer is achieving your career ambitions and the ROI on your education. And largely, we work with universities because they face many challenges with student engagement and career outcomes. So we have a bunch of solutions. It's e-learning and career programming. And then there's some fun AI things that we can talk about later. So a lot of what motivated me to build a company focused on this is because when I looked back and I thought about my mentorship, career development, I was really good at finding a job. Like post MBA, I found 5 jobs in 7 years, which maybe isn't a great thing, but I was obviously very excellent at job searching.
Yeah.
I was on hiring teams, and there was a day I remember interviewing a guy at my alma mater. I'm at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business in Hyde Park in Chicago in their beautiful building. And I have a student that I'm interviewing for a consulting internship, and the interview is terrible until like the last 10 minutes when I kind of, you know, chose to be a coach instead of an interviewer. And I asked some questions. And unfortunately, we couldn't move the person forward, but it befuddled me that a student at that level would struggle in the interview process. And I just kept asking myself, what's going on at every other school in this country? I'm like, this is a problem. And that problem over time got bigger. And like many of us as entrepreneurs, we think to ourselves, well, I can solve that problem. And, you know, a lot of, I think your concept of the village, what really sparked me to do this was that I would coach people informally. And people would say, you're really good at this. Because I had credibility, I had expertise, and I kind of have this no BS way of coaching. And people are like, I like that. And especially people that come from the business world like me, they're just like, don't sugarcoat it. Just like tell me. And I think the other part of it, Damien, is because I had worked at 21, 22, 23 with these mentors who gave feedback that was tough, but it was to help with professional growth. Like they were seeing us 10, 15 years down the road at those senior levels in the company. And you weren't going to get from there. You weren't going to be a seedling and grow into this, you know, beautiful fir tree magically. You needed to have nourishment. And they were just very like straightforward about it. And I'm like, I like that.
Hmm.
So how do we do that? And how I channeled that into Archer Career is thinking about the rigor and the straightforwardness and quite honestly, the simplicity, like covering the basics. And then how do we start to deliver that at scale? Because the basics, a lot of the basics are missing. I don't know if you've ever read resumes.
Mm-hmm.
They're often terrible. And no offense to anyone out there,
Yeah.
I read a lot of resumes. And I am baffled by how a college student can't put together a reasonably solid resume. And that tells me something is really wrong. Like we all know how to drive, most of us. You have to go to driving school. You have to get a driver's license. We teach an entire population of the United States fundamentally how to drive. And most of the time, the roads, people drive in the right lanes. But yet we can't teach college students in mass how to write good resumes. That is a failure to me. So if I had my dream, all college students would have an amazing resume. I don't want to have to judge somebody off of a crappy document. I want to see the person and their potential, but I can't do that because I can't get through the paperwork. So a lot of those things fuel the business.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it, and just deeply appreciative of the reminder that you give the village of just kind of art your career and the work that you all are doing. And the reason I'm deeply appreciative is because as you were talking, it reminded me of a conversation I had just today. I was at an event with an entity called My Brother's Keeper, which is affiliated with the Obama Foundation. And while I was at that event, I reconnected with a young man who has to be 20 now. I first met that young man through a mentoring initiative when he was 16 at a high school on the west side of Chicago. And I kid you not, I was thinking not necessarily about him, but it was that young man and a group of like four others that, myself and some other brothers, we just wrapped our arms around them and we followed them for a while and just consistently provided mentorship, wraparound support, etc. Right. So, anyway, the young man is 20 and he's at this event that we're putting on at 12 noon. He shows up to all of our events. So it struck me, I'm like, do these kids have a job? And I call them kids. Do these young men have a job?
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm like, if I see any of them the next day, I was thinking about this yesterday. So, namely today, I had already resolved in my mind, I'm going to ask them, are you employed? Like, what are your barriers? That's where you are in life right now. We were with you trying to, steward you through a process of getting to this point of graduation. And it's almost as if we're failing you if we don't answer the question of how do we help you to get to that next level of being gainfully employed? So I say all that to say his scenario is quite different from the young people that you work with. He hasn't gone to college yet, but he is in a place for whatever reason that he's struggling with employment. And to a point that you made earlier, it is not unique to him. Even young people who have graduated from colleges is becoming a bigger problem. So now the question I want to advance our conversation to is the magic wand question. I'm literally giving you the magic wand that will enable you in an imaginative way to change anything that you can change about any aspect of your work or barriers to your work being more successful. And ultimately, I'm passing you this wine because I have young people like Amarion and others in mind that I know are of age to be gainfully employed. And for whatever reason, they're out here just trying to navigate life and haven't had much success. Because I know what that can bring. If you're just out here, you're not necessarily being able to land employment, then that can lead to a whole bunch of abysmal things that I don't want for Marion. And or even some of the young people that are graduating from colleges and not able to take that next step. So what are you going to do with that magic wand?
I mean, there's so many needs, Damien. I fundamentally think that high performing companies should have some kind of a job for someone who is purely motivated. And you don't need to submit a resume. You don't have to be from a certain university. Like they say, if you want to work, you show up, we'll run you through a boot camp. You have to have certain fundamentals. But like if you make it through that boot camp, you have a job. And one of the reasons why I think this is so powerful is that I know, and you know it too, there's diamonds in the rough. I mean, I worked at a university in Chicago. It's called North Park University. I was a faculty member there for 10 years. If you blink in Albany Park, you would drive by it. And I had a I had a student come in my office one day for advising, and we're talking, and she was a transfer student. She'd come to us from Oakton Community College, I believe, maybe someplace else. You know, had this clunky journey. Took a gap year. Is telling me about some of the things she's doing. I look at her grades. She's got amazing grades. Is super articulate, but quiet. And I asked a couple of questions. And she said something, Damien. There was like just something she said. And I asked about what are you going to do after college? And she had a few ideas. And I said, well, have you ever thought about the Fulbright program?
Hmm.
She's like, what is that? And I explained it to her. It's run by the State Department. They take college graduates, put them in country, give you this opportunity. And what had triggered it is that her gap year she had spent in Guatemala.
Hmm.
She's like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing." And I directed her to the faculty member. And North Park had this weird superpower of getting students into the Fulbright program. There's a faculty member named Ted Gervais on that campus. Hi, Ted, if you're out there. And he had this insider knowledge. He knew the unwritten rules. I messaged him, I sent her his way, and she worked with him for an amount of time and became a Fulbright
Hmm.
and went to Vietnam. And Rachel Greco is her name. She's married now, wonderful, wonderful person, has a great career, has a spouse who's amazing. That moment, I don't know, I think it changed her life.
Hmm.
And yes, I became a mentor to her. She grew this group of mentors, Professor Gervais and others. And I think she is one of those people that reminds us like you can spark a fire and have an individual who's kind of not on anybody's radar. And what potential do they have? We don't do enough of that. We are a country, we are a system that loves credentials.
Hmm.
So my wand is create a job called work. I don't care what it is. And just let people come and have a very simple structure and let people work that want to work. Because I do think there's a big difference between those that are motivated, the young man you're talking about,
Yeah.
maybe he's motivated, but he just doesn't know, maybe he doesn't have the right things on paper. Fine. You know, let let us go back to that time where like you could start in the mailroom of a company and work your way up. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And you might be surprised at how much hidden talent is out there.
There's language that you called out in that last moment of you sharing out with us here. And it's that insider knowledge and unwritten rules. And I think articulating that there is a such thing as insider knowledge isn't like a nefarious reality. It's not like people are trying to keep something from you or have, that's not the energy by which I heard that from you. It was more like I even think about myself, and I was thinking about Amarion. I have insider knowledge that that young man doesn't have. And just with my experiences, with the fact that I've been on this earth 2 decades beyond, the time that he's been on, there's right, like some unwritten rules, like just things that I've learned, and I've had to like get some scrapes and bruises and had to claw my way through some things. But I can sit that young man down and accelerate his journey in a way that it wouldn't go as fast and as smoothly if he didn't have me kind of sharing some of that insider knowledge with him. So I just wanted to kind of call that piece out because yeah, like as we are doing the work of village, there's something about the shared knowledge. There's something about that willingness to open up the treasure chest of our minds and like the repository of all of the things that we've learned. When I match my insider knowledge with yours, Pam, and then we can match it even with the other, hundreds of folks within our ed tech community. There's just something magical that can happen when the insider knowledge isn't hoarded but it's given freely. So just really appreciate, I think, the magic and some of that language that you gave us there. Now, Pam, we're at a point in time, unfortunately, where we're about to close out this segment. I know I was richly, richly invested in as you were sharing out your lived experience. And you did a good job today, Pam, stretching me in a way that I haven't been stretched before. And it's this understanding the value of story time in this space. It's like Damien, it just isn't about you asking all the questions, getting an answer, going back and forth, but you told us some stories. You took us on our journey today. I appreciate that. Now, here's my question for you. My question centers around what is it, Pam, that you want to leave the village with today? Let me clarify again. We have nonprofit leaders, we have even parents, we have, of course, folks in different entrepreneurial spaces, particularly ed tech, who are going to see this. And I just wonder, like, what is an impression that's top of mind for you that you would want to leave us with? And I know I'm good with layering things on. So even as you close, if there's anything else, handle social media spaces where you want us to find, you're writing a book, like any other parting words that you want to add, please go on with that, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean the simple plug is, follow me on LinkedIn. I share knowledge, and ask about what we do. I think as an entrepreneur, Damien, the thing that I appreciate the most is when people will take a meeting. I'm I'm totally fine when sometimes our solution doesn't meet your needs, but it is so joyful to be able to tell people about the kinds of things that you do and what I do. Take a meeting. We all are busy, but a lot of entrepreneurs have incredible ideas and you might learn something. And I think the second thing I really would ask of people is give individuals the benefit of the doubt. If someone reaches out to you to have a networking conversation, especially if they're young, try to say yes, because the fact that that person reached out, so many people are paralyzed by that action that they don't. If the person did it, give them 15 minutes, give them 20 minutes. You will change that person. You will make an investment. And then what I believe happens, because I've seen it, is that person someday will do it to the next person. And that, to me, I love the fact that you talk so much about the village, Damien. That's
Yeah,
why I was, really excited to do this with you,
for sure.
because we have benefited from I don't do anything today because I did it on my own. I did it because of a collection of people that helped me move up the ladder and
Mm.
and continue. So pay it forward, I think, is the biggest thing that I would ask of people.
What a rich segment. Episode 6 of Village Talks, y'all, that we just had with Pam Schilling of Archer Career. That was amazing. And one of the things that stood out to me from the last part that Pam shared with us there is the fact that Pam and I have been in the same space at least 3 or 4 times. And every time we're together, it's very cordial. It's always a good vibe. I think the first time I met her in person, I was actually in her office space and she was just so inviting and there was a warmth there and it was all amazing. But the fact that we both said yes to each other and we showed up here today and we were willing to take that meeting, as Pam was just instructing us on a moment ago, there's a togetherness now that I feel that's visceral, well beyond, the high and buys that we've done in the past. So there's something to exactly what Pam just said there. Let's be willing to not be so close-minded when it comes to saying yes, when people are offering up an opportunity for us to sit with them and for them to sit with us and for the village to grow and be blessed from it. So, y'all, that's episode 6 of Village Talks with Damien, your friend here, and also Pam Shelley. All right, y'all. Until next time, peace out.